Hi, ladies. Can you believe that we are already on our last week in the book of James? This week we're covering James chapter 5, and I just cannot believe how quickly this went by. Here in Michigan, when we started, we were still having winter flurries and cold, wet weather, and now today it is absolutely gorgeous outside, and the flowers are pushing up, and the leaves on the trees are beginning to come out, and it's just a beautiful day to give thanks and praise to the Lord. It's a wonderful time of the year and a wonderful day to be in His Word. So today we're going to be looking at James chapter 5, and the verses I selected to talk about with you tonight are verses 7 through 8. Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. I love this picture that James gives us of the farmer waiting patiently. It reminds me of a time when my kids were very little. My youngest was still in a stroller, the kind with the big clunky car seat that pops in. Well, and when she was a baby, we would take that big old car seat stroller, and we had rented a raised bed in a greenhouse near our home. And throughout the winter, my little girls, my oldest was about 5 at the time, and our middle daughter would have been just 3.5, 4 years old. So I would go, my husband and I, and pushing the stroller with our little kids in tow, and we went there and we tilled the earth, and we pulled out all the stones, and we planted our seeds, and we watched as our little garden began to grow. And through the winter months, we would take a break and head to the greenhouse where it was warm and bright inside, and there was life everywhere. It was just bed after bed of beautiful green leafy vegetables and plants growing, and it was just a joy. It was a joy to watch our little ones as they explored in the dirt and watched their plants to grow. Their favorite plants were the sweet peas, and I remember their little fingers just plucking those sweet peas and snacking on them, and in the end we had our little harvest, and they took their peas home, and it was a wonderful time. Well, right away, as soon as that season was over, we immediately said, that was wonderful. Let's do that again next year. So when the sign-up sheet rolled around, we paid our deposit and filled out the forms and planned our future garden. But the thing was, our plans did not work out. The following winter, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and I couldn't get out of bed some days, let alone go and plant a garden and put in the time it would take and the effort to grow our plants again. So this verse, just that picture of waiting, it reminds me of that entire season where our little garden bed just lay resting, while I myself lay resting and waiting on God to move and to heal my body and to help me to be able to function again in life. It was a beautiful time in my life, because despite that suffering that I was going through, the physical trials, God was growing something beautiful in me while I was waiting on Him. So as James says, be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. So something I found out about the early and the late rains that I thought was interesting is that the early rains were necessary in order to soften the ground, so that the farmers could plow and then plant the seeds. And the late rains were needed in order for the plants to mature and grow before the harvest. So God sends the rain and the sunshine, and He makes the seeds grow. But the farmer prepares the ground, and he pulls the weeds, and he waters and nurtures and protects the plants as he watches them grow, and waits for that perfect moment when he can harvest the fields that he has poured so much time and energy into. This picture James is giving us, again, points us back to the teaching of Jesus. It tells us in Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 through 38, we read, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." Friend, you and I are the workers that Jesus was talking about. The harvest is plenty, but we need workers to help him to harvest those fields. But the thing about harvest is that you have to know the perfect time to do it. You can't force it. You can't expect a harvest when you haven't yet had the early or the late rains. You can't expect a harvest when the seed has not been sown yet. So we need to wait until that perfect moment in order to do the work that God has laid before us. I recently had the opportunity to witness some friends who were tapping their maple trees, and it was such a neat process to watch. If you've never seen it, totally go and check it out if you can. It's really an amazing thing to witness. But one of the things that struck me was when the time is right for the sap to be collected, everything stops and they have to run and go and collect the sap at the perfect time and then boil it down to get the syrup. And that phase, that time in which they can collect and harvest that sap from the maple trees, is a very short time, a very short window within the year. So when that happens, they have to be prepared. They have to watch the weather and wait patiently. And as soon as that moment hits, they go and they become busy and they harvest. So just like my friends wait patiently all year long for that perfect moment to harvest the sap from their maple trees so that they can get and boil down and make this wonderful maple syrup, we need to wait patiently on God's timing so that we can be the ones that he uses. When we're listening for his voice, when we're waiting expectantly with established hearts that are rooted and grounded in his word, and eyes and ears that are open to hearing his voice, we are in the best possible position that we could be in to fulfill the purpose for which he sent us. Maybe you're like me back when I had that empty garden bed, where some circumstances, maybe your health has put you in a position where you're forced into this quiet season of rest. I want to encourage you today, if that's you, press into the quiet. Open your eyes and your ears and your heart and listen for what God may be doing in you, what he may be saying to you right now in the moment, because growth is happening in that waiting, in that quiet time. Maybe you're not in that place at all. Maybe you're healthy, but maybe you just feel unfulfilled in your efforts to connect with God. Maybe you feel unfulfilled in your desire to understand and connect with his word. Or maybe you're just struggling to focus during your quiet time. And that could lead you to feel really frustrated and guilty. Maybe you're just unsure of what you want to do during your personal study and prayer time. Or you find yourself stuck in a cycle of trying, then quitting, then trying again. Maybe you feel lonely, sad, or disconnected because you're struggling to find a place where you fit in within the church. Or maybe you're frustrated because you can't find a Bible study rhythm that fits into your crazy life. The only thing that will fulfill your soul is the Lord of the harvest himself. Father, I pray that you would open our eyes and our ears to your call and give us the courage to do what you ask of us. Lord, I pray that you would help the women who are watching this tonight to feel seen and heard and accepted by you, because they are, Lord. I pray that you would help them to leave a lasting impact for God's kingdom in their families and their communities and beyond. Lord, I pray that one day we would each hear you say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." I pray, Lord, for the woman right now who feels uncertain, unsure of your love, or unworthy of your love, Father, I pray that you would help her believe with certainty that your promises are true for her too. Father, I pray that you would help each of us to know why you created us the way you did, what our gifts are, and what our purpose is here on the earth. Lord, please make your word alive and active in our everyday lives, and help us to live with peace, joy, and hope even when our circumstances are really difficult. Lord, please help us to understand with confidence who you are, what we believe, and why we believe it, so that we can step forward and boldly proclaim your truths in a world that so desperately needs it. Father, I thank you so much for the opportunity you've allowed us to share in this time together in your word in the book of James. Thank you for these wonderful truths that you've preserved and allowed us to study. Father, may they be a blessing in our lives. May we patiently wait and may we patiently wait for your harvest, Lord, and help us to hear that harvest signal and go out into the fields and gather for you. In Jesus' name, amen. My challenge for you today is to set aside some time this week to intentionally be quiet and listen for God's voice in your life. Whether you spend a minute or 5 or 10 or I don't know, maybe even half an hour if you're really bold, right? I'm going to be honest with you. You might have to stay up late or get up early to do this, especially if you're a mom who's busy with kids, but it will be so worth it. Listen for God's voice in your life. You can hear from him. So I urge you, set aside a little time and listen for God's voice in your life. And if you hear him speak something to you, then leave it in the comments below. I would love to hear how God is speaking in your life today. As always, the best conversations happen over at beautifulbiblestudies.com, our online women's Bible study community. Keep in his word and keep growing, because the world needs the extraordinary gifts God created in you. Thanks for watching. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but the ice cream truck is driving. Do you hear that? It's funny.